Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends. Guys, welcome back to r/entitled people, where grown adults call police when they don't get what they want from others. My friends, get ready for another wild episode filled with outrageous stories. I hope you enjoy them, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Now, I just want to preface this by saying that I'm a 34-year-old female, and I married my husband, who's 37, a year ago. Now, his mom is Snoopy, and she's annoying as F. She can't help it, that's just how she is, according to her family. My husband and I purchased a new house recently, and my mother-in-law kept pushing to get an emergency key. She promised that she would only use it in an emergency. But given the fact that she had an emergency key to our old apartment and she walked in on us being intimate twice, I couldn't trust her, so I sent her a fake key after she kept pushing. And she had a smug look on her face after I hand-delivered it to her. So days go by, and on Christmas dinner, my mother-in-law angrily calls me out on the fact that I gave her a fake copy of the house key, a key to my house. Now, she shamed me for doing this in front of everybody, but in my defense, I asked her how she found out. She then said that a few days ago, when my husband and I were out, she popped by at 4 p.m., but the key didn't work. I then reminded her, didn't you promise you wouldn't use it unless there was an emergency? So you tried to get in when there was no emergency, and you broke the promises you made to us. She then looked red in the face, and the other family started staring, and some even laughed at her for the face she made. She suddenly gets up from her seat, and she rushes into the kitchen, where she had a huge meltdown, basically throwing a tantrum so loud the next door neighbors must have heard. Literally, I've never heard a 60-plus-year-old woman throw a tantrum like that. Needless to say, dinner went awkward, and my husband and his sister were giving me looks. My husband then yelled at me in the car, and said that I lied and manipulated and humiliated and exposed his mom, and said that he wouldn't have let me get away with it had he known. So we had an argument, and he's demanding that I apologize to his mom for my childish behavior, and for ruining Christmas dinner for the whole family. So am I the a-hole? Personally, I think heck no. And OP's husband needs to stand up for his wife, seriously. Getting mad at OP for lying and manipulating and humiliating his mom? Like, what about the fact that his mom was the one who lied and decided to just go to their house unannounced and try to enter their house? Like, how creepy is that? Honestly, he should question his mom as to why she feels entitled to enter a grown man's home whenever she feels like it. Especially when she walked in on her son being intimate with his wife twice, for goodness sake. Like, I don't know about you guys, but if I was the son after the first time it happened, I'd be like, Mom, no more key. Give it to me right now. Don't apologize, OP. Stand your ground. The summer between my freshman and sophomore years of college, I got an internship at the local history museum doing exhibit design work. I was in charge of designing and painting a mural to serve as a backdrop for an exhibit on the Underground Railroad. So I got my design approved and the materials either collected or ordered, and I was off. Now, for the layout, I was in a little circular freestanding room that had 4 entries cut into the walls. There were no doors, but because the whole room was so stagnant, I wasn't safe putting up tarp around the openings while I was inside. So while working, I taped a big X across them along with a sign provided by the museum. Now this worked for weeks. I'd of course get the occasional, "What are you doing?" from kids and parents. And I was always happy to talk about my jobs. And the kids and parents I interacted with seemed to like me a lot. Until that one fateful day. Enter Karen and her crotch fruit. I'm up on a stepladder airbrushing some clouds as I'm trying to finish the background before the weekend. Suddenly from behind me, a hand grabs the bottom of my pants and tugs me to get my attention. I look down and see a kid, and he says, "What are you painting? Can I help?" I then step off the ladder and pull off my respirator, guiding the kid out of my space. I tell him, "Hey sweetie, no, you can't help. This is my job. This isn't for fun. The paints here can be dangerous, especially if you don't have one of these." I then tap my respirator. I then say to him, "Where's your parents? Let's get you back. I'm sure they're worried." He then points to a woman sitting on a bench nearby on her phone. So I take his hand and walk him up to her and say, "Hi ma'am, your son made his way to my workspace, which could be very dangerous for him. I'm in the middle of painting, and the fumes can be quite dangerous, not to mention the..." The woman then cuts me off and says, "Yeah, I told him he can go paint with you. This is a kids museum, so I didn't think you'd mind." At this I say to her, "No, I'm sorry, but this exhibit is not open. I can't be responsible for your child's safety. If you can please keep him out of the area, that would be great." Now, I don't have time for this. Besides, the longer I leave that old airbrush, the more likely it's going to be that I have to spend extra time trying to unclog the thing, before I can get back to work. Now, the Karen doesn't like that answer though, and once I'm back at work, she apparently sends her kid over again and just tells him that he can do whatever he wants. I don't notice anything over the racket of the air compressor for the airbrush, until I go to step down to work on another section. When I turn around, this kid is finger painting with a half-spilled bottle of my very expensive paints. Now, the cost was covered by the museum, but that's not the point. So I start freaking out at the rotten crotch fruit, and I grab him by the arm to march him over to his mom. Before we can get 4 steps, she's shrieking her way over, saying, "How dare you put your hands on my son? He just wanted to help. You are stifling his creativity. Don't you want kids to like art?" At this, I say to her, "Your kid's help is gonna cost me an extra week on the project." I then call over my favorite coworker, Greg, who's the security guard, who did the rounds in this wing that I worked in. Long story short, she shrieks about getting all of us fired, how stupid the museum was, how her husband's a lawyer, and we will be hearing from them. But even with all that frothing, she was kicked out. And I managed to finish the exhibit on time that summer, and everybody seemed to love how it was designed. Now, I love that part where the Karen was like, "You're stifling my child's creativity. How dare you?" I'm sorry, but telling your child that they can go finger paint over someone's professional artwork, ruining it, isn't letting them be creative, okay? It's blatant vandalism. Like some people, I'm so shocked at this. Now, I've seen posts about this kind of thing, and I thought, no way this is real. What kind of idiot would call the police for that? Well, yesterday it happened, and I'm still confused at what this lady was thinking. So we've been looking for a car for our youngest. Looking through online ads, we come across an ad for a luxury car that only wanted about 1/3 of what this car blue books for. The person says the car just suddenly stopped starting. Now, my husband's a mechanic, so we decided to take a look at it just to see. Immediately, he sees a couple of potential problems as to why it doesn't start. The car has new tires, the body's nearly perfect, the interior needs a few easy fixes. It's still well worth way more than the owner's asking, even with paying for repairs to get it running. So of course we bought it. My youngest is ecstatic about getting a luxury car for graduation. My husband ends up getting the car running, and it's an easier fix than he originally thought. And now it's time for the crazy lady. It's time for plates and registration, so off to the DMV we go. We come out with the temporary tags, and as my husband's putting them on the car, this lady walks up and she says, "Excuse me." Now I'm distracted by the phone, and I say, She repeats, "Excuse me." I say to her, "I'm sorry, do you need something?" She says, "Yes, that car." Now I look at her and say, "My car? What about it?" She then asks me where I got it, and I told her we bought it a few weeks ago, and she says, "That's my car." At this point, my husband hears, and he chimes in and says, "No, it isn't. Now get away from us." The crazy lady then says, "Yes, that's the car I was gonna buy from that previous owner, and you stole it from me." I then told her that I paid the previous owner what they were asking, and nothing was said about her. And then I asked her to please leave us alone. The crazy lady then said, "The previous owner and I had an agreement about the car, and you came in and made her sell it to you. I want it back, and I want it now. I had to buy that piece of junk over there instead. Give me my car." Now, my husband and I are standing there baffled at this woman. We then ask her again to please leave us alone, and she says, "I'm not going anywhere. I've already called the police, and I've told them that I've found my stolen car, and they're on the way." At this, my husband says, "Are you nuts, lady? You can't just report a car stolen because you missed the chance to buy it." Now, what this insane woman doesn't know is that we're actually waiting on the previous owner to show up to get her plate and registration, because there was a mix-up with the title, and we had to wait to get that fixed before we could title, register, and plate it, so we were still using the correct plates. The previous owner can then turn in her plate to get a refund for the months not used. So 2 police cruisers pulled up about 5 minutes later. The previous owner pulled in right behind them. As the 2 officers are getting out and asking who called, the previous owner walked up to me and my husband, asking what's going on. She hadn't noticed the crazy lady yet. So the crazy lady immediately starts yelling how she had paid for this car, and we forced the previous owner to give us the title instead. She wanted us arrested, and her given the title and possession of the car right now. One of the officers then walked over to us, and I grinned because it's one of my friend's sons. The officer says, "Hey, Brandy, you want to tell me what's going on?" I tell him, "I really don't know. We bought this car a few weeks ago from her," pointing to the previous owner. And while we were waiting for her to show up to get her plates, this woman starts screaming at us about stealing the car. Something about how they had an agreement about the car, but she sold it to us instead. And now this crazy lady's demanding that we take whatever car she ended up buying and we give her this one. Hearing this, the previous owner said, "Oh my goodness, this is exactly why I didn't sell her the car in the first place. She's my neighbor and she's insane." The owner then told us that when she decided to sell it, she told Crazy Lady she could buy it. But Crazy Lady wanted her to get it running again and still sell it to her for the low price. Crazy Lady was then told that the owner didn't want to deal with it, and that's why the price was so low. The owner then said that Crazy Lady kept calling her and harassing her asking if she had it running yet, and she was told no. But she kept calling, saying to sell it to her when she got it up and running. The officer then going with procedures, checked all of our IDs, checked the bill of sale, previous registration, and even ran the VIN. Everything checked out. Officer then says, "I think we're done here." He then looks at the crazy lady and says, "Ma'am, it's a crime what you've attempted here. Actually, you just made a false report, which is a crime, and I could arrest you, but I'm not. I'm sure you're just upset and you made a bad judgment call, so I'm gonna let it slide." At this, the crazy lady says, "No, it wasn't a false report. That's my car." Officer then tells her, Ma'am, please stop, just stop. I could also charge you with attempted car theft, but we're all just gonna walk away now." At this point, she screams even louder and says, No, I'm not just walking away. This is stupid. You," pointing to the officer, "will get my car back." The other officer has enough, and he says, "Ma'am, please step over by the cruiser. We need to have a talk." I then give the plate to the previous owner, and Officer 1 told us to have a nice day. Husband and I went ahead and left while the previous owner went into the DMV. The crazy lady was still ranting at the second officer about allowing us to steal the car. The previous owner texted me later, saying that they ended up putting Crazy Lady into the back of the police car when she left, and she was still yelling. Now, I'm not worried about any future contact with Crazy Lady. We don't live in that small town where the DMV is, or where they live. In a couple of months, the car's gonna be 2 hours away with my youngest at college. The crazy lady doesn't know our names, and the previous owner doesn't know where we live. Seriously guys, every time I read a crazy post, I think, okay, nothing tops this. And then something else comes along to completely flabbergast me. Like the audacity of that lady to call police and lie. Guys, she lied because she didn't get what she wanted. Now I do feel bad for the woman who sold the car to OP and her husband though. She's gonna have to answer to that crazy neighbor when she gets out. With that said, guys, learn from the crazy lady right here. If police ever let you off with a warning, just take it and go. So, we used to live near a school zone, and the 15-mile-per-hour speed limits ended about a quarter of the mile away from our neighborhood. My mom, my sister, and I were about to pull out of our neighborhood and turn left. We stop at the stop sign, check that no cars are coming, and start the turn. When out of nowhere, a car that was going at least 65 to 70 miles per hour zooms down the road. We didn't see it coming, but I warned my mom in time to stop. The car clips us, spins out of control, and crashes into a stop sign and demolishes the wall of one of our neighbors. Everyone in our car was fine. We then rush over to the other car, and sitting in the driver's seat was a mom, and there was a child in the passenger seat while in a car seat. Now in the USA, children that require a car seat have to sit in the back. And this child in particular was no more than 5 years old. In the back, there was 2 other children, between 7 and 10, without a seatbelt, and one of them was unconscious. I deal with a lot of first aid and CPR in my line of work, so I rush to help the kids. The mom struggles to get out of the car. Now I do ignore her, seeing that kids are more important. And as I'm trying to get the door open, I hear her screaming at me saying, "Come help me! What are you doing?" Now I did feel a little bad for ignoring her, and I said, "I'm sorry, are you in pain? Can you move?" The woman then screams, "Yeah, but I can't get out. You should help me first." So I go over to help her. I pull her out, and she storms over to my mom, who's on the phone with the cops. Keep in mind, her kids were still trapped in the car. So I get the kids out, sit them on the curb, and start to check on the unconscious one. The kid was still knocked out, so dragging her out was a bit more difficult, and I had to grab her legs and waist to properly carry her. It was literally the best and safest way to pull her out of the totaled car. I then check her breathing, and thankfully she's alright. And my best guess was a concussion. I've been ignoring the woman and my mom the whole time, but I can hear the woman getting really angry. She's screaming at my mom saying, "What the F is wrong with you?" She then snatches the phone from my mom's hand and says, "Hello? This crazy lady pulled out at a crazy high speed. As I was driving down the road and my car is totaled, she's a maniac and she needs to be arrested. She nearly killed my children. Now, on the road, there are skid marks leading to where the totaled car is. There's no skid marks leading to our car. That's pretty obvious who was speeding and who was obeying the law. At this point, she sees me holding her younger daughter, pulling her out of the car. She says, "You! Put my daughter down, you pervert!" At this, I was confused. I was trying to save her kid's life. I then walked to the sidewalk and used my jacket as a sort of padding between her daughter and the ground. I then check her vitals to make sure she's alright. By this time, the cops show up and the woman shrieking to them that I was taking advantage of her daughter and that my mom was intentionally trying to hurt her kids. My sister had gone back into our house to get some water bottles, being thoughtful enough to get the entire cooler filled. The cops were thankful, as were the kids, who were pretty nice and calm throughout the whole ordeal. I then showed the cops my ID and explained my job position. They got an ambulance who confirmed that what I did was the right thing to do, and the way I got the daughter out of the car was the best way possible. We think everything's gonna be calm, but oh no. Karen screams, "Arrest her! She clearly wanted to kill my kids. She's a reckless driver and she should be punished." Another cop who was taking my statement said, "This woman had one of her children in the front seats, and neither of the kids in the back was wearing a seatbelt." There was also a digital speed camera up on the road, and the third cop went to go check it. Now, not only was the woman going 75 miles per hour in a 35-mile zone, but she started her speeding in a school zone while the school was letting out, meaning kids were everywhere. She was promptly arrested, and the kid's dad was called, who profusely apologized, and they went to the hospital and the daughter was taken too. Now, what in the world is wrong with that woman? Recklessly speeding in a neighborhood, child in a car seat in the front, kids in the back with no seatbelt. I'm sorry, but someone needs to take the kids away from this woman. There's so much wrong with this story. So a little backstory is in order. I have 2 young adult children living at home, ages 18 and 19. They both work and go to college. I trust my kids, and I trust their decision-making skills. When they graduated high school and turned 18, new rules went into place. There was no longer a curfew. Just call me and let me know if you're gonna be out all night so I don't worry. You can call me at any time for a pickup. No questions asked. Don't be stupid and drink and drive. Yes, your significant other can sleep over or come over for the weekend. Just let me know what's going on. If you're working, pay a small rent during the summer and pay your part of the car insurance. You have your chores, I have mine. We all work together. I tell them if they listen, I listen to them. There's been very little fighting or arguing in my house. This is their time to spread their wings and learn how to be responsible and have me as a safety net. So lately, one of my kids' significant others has been spending a lot of time at my house. He's here pretty much all the time. So 2 days ago, I get a phone call from a number that I didn't recognize, and I answered it, and that was my daughter's boyfriend's mom. I pick up the phone and she says, "Hey, you need to tell my kid that he's not allowed at your house anymore." I ask her, "Who's this?" She says, "This is Tommy's mother." Now, I already know where this is going, so I say, "Oh, Tommy's mom. Now, I have to say that you've raised a great young man. He's always polite, respectful, in fact..." She then interrupts and says, "Look, I don't care what you think about my kid. He's never home. He's not spending any time with me." I then say to her, "Okay, there's not much I can do about that." She says, "Yes, there is. Tell him he can't come to your house anymore. I want him home, and you set a bad example for my son. Your daughter has no curfew, and I'm sick and tired of hearing about how nice it is being at your house." I then basically growl into the phone and ask her, "Are you done yelling at me?" She stays silent, so I continue on and say, "I will take that as a yes. Do you trust the way you raised your son?" At this, the woman asked, "What? It's a simple question. Do you trust the way you've raised your son?" She says, "Of course I do. What does that have to do with anything? Do you trust him to make good decisions?" She says, "Yes. Of course." I then say to her, "Mother to mother, I know things are not okay at your house right now. I know her husband drinks a lot and he's an alcoholic." I then say to her, "I'm trying to give your child a safe place when things are not okay at your house." She then starts to cut me off at this point, but I won't let her. I tell her, "It's not your fault." The woman is still silent, and I go on and say, "He throws your son out for days at a time sometimes, doesn't he?" Now, I can hear her choking back the tears, and I say, "Do you need someone to talk to? Do you want to go out for lunch? That way, you can feel safer knowing whose house your son's at and that he's safe." The mom then agrees. We were on the phone for about an hour after that. So what started out as an entitled Karen yelling at me was just a scared woman feeling very, very alone. Now I'm sorry there's no righteous retribution, but I think it turned out okay. I'm gonna try and get 19-year-old Tommy's curfew changed from 10 p.m. to midnight, and maybe he can stay over for the weekend. Props to OP for handling that wonderfully. So when I first read this post, I literally thought it was gonna go super entitled, like, how dare you keep my son away from me, I'm gonna call the police on you story. But that ended so wholesomely. I'd like to think that the two moms became good friends after that, and their kids ended up marrying each other because, hey, why not have a happy ending, right? And that, my friends, brings us to another end of our /entitled people. Guys, I hope you enjoyed the stories today. If you did, leave that thumbs up. If you missed yesterday's episode on the channel, it's a pro-revenge, where OP gets revenge on a cult. It's such a crazy story, so go check it out if you haven't. And myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.